Hello everyone, it's Safa. I finally got around to making this video, which has been a really important process actually for me to think about what I'm actually going to say here, because to me emotional processing is key to everything. It's key to manifesting what we want, and of course to feeling better overall, and being able to understand why we feel is really important, and how we feel as individuals, what our feeling patterns tend to be, and how we process our traumatic experiences as well as our joyful experiences, because everything's a continuum that feeds into each other. So I just want to start by saying that everybody has all feelings at one point in their life, but what we don't all have is a supportive home environment where we're taught that having different types of feelings is okay. Gender roles play into this, crying and things like that. We all have had different socialization around that. And of course, how we react to our socialization is individual. Obviously, even if we're socialized one way, how we react is based on our personal choices and experiences. In addition to that, I would say our culture overall tends towards not seeing emotions as a positive thing as much as they are, a hindrance, or there's a belief that having emotions at all that aren't happiness or whatever it means, it equals having an emotional problem. So emotions are automatically a problem, instead of seeing it as like some people have emotional problems, which is where they get stuck in one emotion and they can't feel others, either due to the socialization or due to what would be called a chemical imbalance, which I believe that are, on a micro level, those chemicals are obviously reflections of our experiences. Like, I don't need to tell anybody that, like, that makes a lot of sense, right? That our chemicals would be reflections of our experiences. So that includes our ancestry, that includes, our genes, what could pass down to us. And, watch my video about karmic cycles, but that's part of our karma that gets passed down from generation to generation, is, sort of like how we handle emotions, like what emotions are coming up, because it has been shown, through epigenetics, that people have the same triggers as their parents from traumas that they didn't personally experience because it's built into their DNA. That's kind of nuts to me. But when you're doing emotional processing, sometimes you will be processing for your family line because of that. So you may have emotions that come from places that you have no idea why it's happening. And that could be because something happened to your mother or father that caused them to develop this reaction. We have something called the affect system in our bodies, where there's a stimulus and there's a trigger. So the stimulus triggers something within us, usually a memory, or quite potentially something on a primal level that we all experience, or, like I was saying, something, an experience that's been passed down through our ancestral line, that our bodies are already pre-programmed to react certain ways to certain things based on our ancestral line, which also includes our upbringing. This also includes conception, what we experienced as conception, being that we were physical entities. The body has its own memories. Like the brain, the conscious mind may not develop until later, but the unconscious mind, otherwise known as the body and the nervous system, obviously, the cells have their own memories, because they are individual entities within themselves that pass on these feelings or these vibrations onto other cells as they die. We are all societies within ourselves. So if these things don't make sense to you, it might be because You think a different way than I do. But what I want to just say right off the bat is that I've had a lot of experience myself doing emotional processing, and I come from an upbringing which allows me to do emotional processing in a way that's like safe, because of what my parents believe. But then there's been a lot of things in my family where, certain emotions have been shamed and other emotions have been put up on a pedestal and like so on and so forth. But I just want to talk about the techniques that I use. So what I want to say first and foremost is that you can't do processing of emotions without feeling those emotions, but that feeling emotions doesn't necessarily mean that you're processing them. So, like, for example, I could be like, I'm so sad, I'm so sad, I'm so sad, and be focusing on the fact that I'm sad, but I won't be going into the root experience of why I'm sad. So, like, I won't be going through what was the stimulus that triggered the past experience, the memory that then brought up the affect, the feelings. And on a spiritual level, what that is that we are being given opportunities through karmic cycles to have these emotions, these old emotions brought up again, so that we can experience the feelings that our bodies couldn't feel when we were having our traumatic experiences in the past. So these emotions are tied back, either through your own individual life or sometimes all the way through your ancestral line back to some traumatic experience that needs to be integrated. So integration is acknowledgement. It's acknowledging that the experience happened and it's showing up for yourself in that experience. So for that, I use the Completion process by Teal, Swan. I believe that this process is channeled by her, so not necessarily, something that's like a mental construct of her ego, but something that she channeled directly from source. Because I've had friends use the Completion process without knowing, often on psychedelics. They've gone back to their past memories. Sorry about the plane, but they've gone back to their past memories to stand up for themselves or to give the inner child what they need. So inner child work of any kind, anything that appeals to you, because some people like to do inner child work by literally physically embodying, like child's play or something like that. Or they may even, do visualizations that directly relate to, the inner child, giving the inner child what it needs, not necessarily in the Completion process, but like a similar process to that. Or labeling their emotions as coming from the inner child. So like for example, if you're reacting what would be quote unquote irrational to current life experience, you could say that's my inner child speaking to me. That's my inner child wanting to be seen. So if that's the case, if you're having what's quote unquote called emotional problems, that's probably just because you have these past experiences that were really heavy that need to be integrated. And like there's certain things too that like when you open up certain chakras, when you unblock certain chakras, you're going to find that emotions have been stored there in kind of like a continuum. So, for example, when I was doing a cacao ceremony, you can process emotions in supportive groups as well, and that's really great. Going to any kind of peer support type group, for anger management or anything like that, the peer support and the people being able to relate to you will really help. But in this cacao ceremony, we were guided through a process where we acknowledged each one of the chakras in a different way with a physical motion and a sound that we made. And then at the very end, he said, now release everything from your root chakra down into the earth. And what came out of me, out of my mouth was this like ear-shattering scream. And I began to just break down in tears. So we need these processes to get this stuff out, because the other side to emotional processing that's often, either demonized or exalted is compartmentalization. So some people are really good at taking those emotions and saving them for later to process. But what people do a lot is they compartmentalize and then they don't process. So it's just sort of stored, right? It's sealed, but not being acknowledged, not, so that's your inner child that you're neglecting when you're good at compartmentalization, but not good at processing. Some people are good at letting the inner child completely take over and not acknowledge that that's what's happening. So a lot of people will be very emotional the majority of the time and be mostly blaming it on the stimulus. So saying, like, it's your fault that I feel this way would be a good example of that, because anything that a person does in the present, we have a choice of how we react. But a lot of times we choose to let the emotion take over and not compartmentalize. But sometimes the emotion is that strong that we literally can't. So this is something that I experienced in Kundalini Awakening, is that the emotions would be coming up so strong because that person was basically manifested into my reality to help me be triggered, so that to help me, give me an opportunity to process. But a lot of times what would happen was I would just react, and then I would blame it on the person, and then when that happens, it's kind of like a reset, because it's like, okay, you've blamed it on the person, and you have it processed. So the universe is going to manifest another experience to help you resolve that emotion within yourself, especially around the past trauma aspect. So yeah, it was definitely pretty hard for me at first, but another thing that helped was for me to use the tarot cards for emotional processing, because I'd be feeling a certain way and I would ask the cards why, and it would help me to bring up or trigger some of those experiences. So the cards would become the stimulus, and would oftentimes be very accurate. For example, the King of Pentacles is a huge trigger for me, especially like the way his face even looks, like on the card in the Rider-Waite deck. And you're going to find things in the cards that trigger you and that send you back into these memories and help you to process. And I use Shamanic Journeying, and I talk to my guides, and which are often like spirit animals and things like that, to help me do emotional processing by, they show me images that trigger me, basically, what happens a lot. And I want to talk more about that in another video. But, basically, what I've used archetypes to do is to understand myself, to be able to see how these archetypes, how I'm a reflection of these archetypes. So when I started studying my natal chart, I would go into each aspect of each planet in each house and look at which things were affecting me in what areas of my life. And what I noticed was that, my North Node was affecting me hugely. My Mars in Cancer placement affects me a lot. The fact that I'm an Aquarius moon, so your moon sign is really going to affect you. So look at what planets that you have in water signs. Look at what planets are in the 7th house of relationships, or in Libra, which also could symbolize relationships, and Gemini as well. But you're going to gain a lot of insight from these things, because you're going to find that the archetypes relate directly to either how you react to situations, if you tend to compartmentalize, or to just basically, sound off on people without actually diving deep into why you personally as an individual are feeling that way. Then your astrology is going to tell you, where you kind of have limitations in places that you need to grow. I think that there's a lot more that can be said about this topic, because, people have so many emotions, and I want to go through and talk about each emotion in different videos and why we experience these things. Because, there's an aggregate experience, right? There's a reason why we each experience each emotion, and what these emotions tell us about ourselves as human beings. So as the incarnations of the universe that we are right now, in this lifetime, or in this particular dimension of experience. So yeah, I'm going to go through those, and I'm going to go through how emotions affect manifestation in another video when I talk about how manifestation works. But yeah, I'm going to list some processes in the description box for you. But remember, this is what Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, I probably pronounced his name wrong, but what he said about emotions is, your emotions are your friends. Treat them as your friends. Okay? Think about that. Drop a comment, like, subscribe. Thank you so much, everyone. Blessed be, and Feel your feelings. Bye.